All right, everybody. Hey, welcome back. This is David with Easy REI Closings in our continuing adventure to teach you a little bit about real estate and help you navigate the crazy muddy waters of this business. I wanted to bring in my friend Lauren. She's with Key Title in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they're probably one of the biggest investor-friendly title companies in the whole state and kind of in this region. So I wanted to bring somebody on to teach you all a little bit about the title work, right? Because it's sort of that mysterious thing that happens kind of like behind the curtain at the Wizard of Oz. And I'll be honest with you, until we started delving deep into title, there's a lot of things that I didn't understand. So honestly, some of this is for me too, so I can learn some stuff. So we always love to have really smart people on these podcasts and YouTube videos. So Ms. Lauren, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Cool beans. Well, I'm Lauren, and like he said, I work at Key Title here in Chattanooga. I've been there about 3 years, right at almost 3 years. So I started just as a title processor there. So I process all the files, clear the title, get it ready for the escrow portion, and then.
So you said a lot of things there that people aren't going to understand. Slow it down for the simple guys like me.
So I work at a title company, obviously. So one of the things that we do obviously is to clear the title. So we send out a search on the title. It does about like a 20 to 30 year search.
Okay.
Comes back with like mortgages, liens, judgments, things of that nature on there. Typically anything that's owed on the property or any cloud on the title.
So here's how I always used to think about it. You sort of got your house and then clouds and liens are sort of like just things piled on top, right? And if I was going to sell this house to Nolan, I got to clear all that stuff off, right? And that's what selling it free and clear means.
Correct.
Kind of, right?
Yeah. Okay. And so think about it when you're buying a house. If you need a mortgage to put on your house to buy this house, your mortgage company is going to put a lien on your house as collateral to ensure their collateral. And so that's a cloud on your title, technically.
Gotcha. So that means if you don't pay, they can
take it back. And same with like construction, for example. If you hire somebody to do some construction on your house, you don't pay them, then they'll put a lien on your property, like a municipal or a mechanic's lien on your property. And if you were to ever go sell your house, you have to pay them off.
Gotcha. But they could foreclose?
They're not in first position, technically.
Okay.
So they can't foreclose, but they can always have a cloud on your title.
So I've heard that a lot, like position, first position, second position, or first mortgage, second mortgage. I always kind of feel like it's like your kindergartners lining up. Like the person in front, that's the winner. Right?
Yes,
That's the person with the most power.
Exactly. And it's typically mortgages are your first position. Or like, and then some people, a second position will be like a HELOC on your house, a home equity line of credit.
Okay.
That'll be, they get paid second if it ever gets foreclosed on.
Okay. And then it just sort of goes down the line.
Right.
What happens if there's not enough money to pay the eighth guy?
Well, good question. Then they go after the seller directly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, typically.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay. So kind of let's run through the process here for the process for dummies, which is, so I have these contracts and I'm a wholesaler and I'm going to roll into the title company and I'll be like, hey, Lauren, I brought you donuts and these 2 shitty files. So
it happens.
I always try to get the good donuts. Always take your title agents good donuts. So I've got these contracts, my underlying contract with the seller, my maybe assignment or my selling contract with my end buyer. And here you go. Can we close tomorrow?
Well, we can't close tomorrow, but so typically what I like to tell investors when they come and have never used us before, this is kind of how the process works. Okay. So you submit your contract to us, whether it's just your front, we call it at the title company, A to B contract and your B to C contract. So your front contract and your back contract. You can send us both at once, or if you want to just send us your A to B and go ahead and kind of get started.
So A to B would be my contract with Mrs. Smith who's selling.
Correct. Seller and wholesaler is what we refer to as A to B, and then wholesaler and end buyer is what we refer to as B to C.
Gotcha.
So once we get the contract, we obviously build it in our system, and then we send a search on the property. And this is the search that we were talking about, shows any encumbrances on the title. Where we are here in Chattanooga, our searches currently are taking about 7 to 10 business days to return to us.
So the search, and I hate to keep stopping you because this is common for you, but
I know
for dumb knuckle dragging wholesalers like me, we I love to understand it. So you do it all electronic? Is it through software?
Yeah, so we underwrite with Fidelity and we do all of our searches through Fidelity. So we basically send them a message that says, here's the property address, here's who's on the title, and here's who it's being sold to. Okay. And they have what's called abstractors, which an abstractor's job is to pull records from
So they literally down to the courthouse.
Yes.
Open the dusty books?
Yeah. Well, sometimes actually. So here in Hamilton County, where we are, everything's online for the most part up until like the 60s, I think. Anything prior to the 60s, they don't have online. But so they just kind of pull everything online. But in some really rural towns, like in Georgia, they have to have boots on the ground people, which means your searches can take longer to come back because they have to physically pull all the deeds on that property and scan them in.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever gone and looked in the books?
I haven't, but we used to have somebody that worked with us that did that he grew up in a family that were abstractors.
Nice. So the term is chain of title, right? You're trying to make sure you have a good chain of title, just meaning that it passed from this person to this person, and there was nothing goofy going on.
Right.
The people who owned it both signed and sold to this person, and there were no liens. So that's like one link of the chain.
Yeah.
And then we go to the next link, right? And that's what you're doing. You're just going kind of link to link all the way up to the future or to the present, right?
To the present. And we do a 30-year search. So it only goes back 30 years.
Gotcha.
Period. So it pulls, again, not only liens and stuff, but also, like you said, chain of title. So rules change throughout the years too of how you have to convey property. But it's basically saying, like you said, like if somebody died on title, they made sure all the heirs signed it over to the next person and that all the proper paperwork was filed to send it to the next person on title. And if there are any problems, even 20 years ago, then we have to correct that issue, even though it was 20 years ago.
What if all those people are dead?
That's when you have to hire an attorney.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
It's a great time. I've had that happen. So we would send off a search. And what we do in the meantime is, luckily there's companies like yours that get a lot of information about the sellers. So we want to go ahead and make sure we know who's on the title, which is what you guys kind of do with your transaction coordinating company, is you go ahead and ask these questions to the sellers that we need. Marital status, because in Tennessee that matters. Like, do you have a mortgage? Did you inherit this property? Is this a mobile home? Because all these things matter at the end of the day. And if we already have a jump start on this before our search comes back, by the time we have our search, we're already working on clearing this title. So whether it be a mobile home or a mortgage, we've already got that payoff. We've already tried to look into the mobile home itself. We're already starting to work on clearing the title.
Nice. So the clearing the title, how long is that normally taking now for you here in Tennessee?
Honestly, depends on what comes back on the title. A mortgage takes a week sometimes to get a payoff back. So again, I have all this information usually by the time my search comes back. So if it's something big, like it needs a survey, obviously that takes months, weeks.
And some of that varies by state, right? Everybody's just a little bit different.
Correct. And this is specific to our area here in Hamilton County. It can take a day or it can take weeks. It just kind of depends on what type of situation it is. And that's why I think, again, y'all's company is really good, because these wholesalers, they really need to vet their sellers, right? Not just are they like good people, but where did you get this property from? Who's on the title? Did you inherit it? Has it ever been in a tax sale? There's a lot of probing questions that not only helps you with timeline as a wholesaler, but also the title company with what to expect on how long it's going to take.
But Lauren, I'm an impatient wholesaler and I need to get paid. Isn't that what you do? Do your thing. Let's get this. I need to get paid.
I know, it would be, I wish it was easy, but again, like I said, I know I keep mentioning, but that's why your company is really great too, because you've already told us this up front, and that way we can work together. And having a transaction coordinator, if they're not answering my phone calls, they're answering yours. And if they're not answering yours, they're answering mine. And like, you have somebody that can go out and physically get this from them if we need a document signed. It's a good teamwork, but it also takes the stress off of the wholesaler as well. Not having to actually physically go to these people and beg for documents.
So you mentioned a lot of other things. You said title processor, abstracting. You were rattling off a lot of crazy terms there at the beginning. What are some of the other things that are happening behind the curtain at the Wizard of Oz?
So we do obviously a lot, like we do escrow here in Tennessee, which is essentially, it deals with all the money. That's what I tell people. Escrow deals with money. Processing deals with clearing the title. Okay. I don't do anything with escrow.
Really? You don't get to hold the money?
No, thank you. I don't want that kind of pressure on me. But so like they do the settlement statements, which is all of the final numbers that show exactly everything that's being charged for on this through the closing.
So the person looking at the title problems is not the same as the...
Correct.
Interesting.
Okay. Not at our title company. Some title companies, you have the same person from beginning to end. But where we are, we have a processing team, which clears the title. And then we have our escrow team, which does everything everything with money.
Okay.
So we all kind of work together, and we're usually all in the same emails together.
Gotcha.
But that way we can all chime in at the same time. Like if a lender asks for an updated title, you know, whatever it is, I'll send that. But if they want an updated settlement statement, they'll send that. And so that way we're always getting it done within a timely manner.
Wow. How many files do you guys do a month?
A month. So we typically try to average around at least 10 a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. So yeah, I would say 40 or so files.
That's a lot.
A month. Yeah, we're really busy.
That's a lot. Wow.
Really busy.
So, I mean, it sounds like you guys do a lot of stuff. Why would somebody even need a transaction coordinator?
Well, that is a really good question. So unfortunately, I feel like this is me personally and my experience.
Yeah.
Some wholesalers think that the title company is one and the same as a transaction coordinator.
Well, that was, you know, when I started this, 20 something years ago, they would say that get good people on your team, build this all-star team and get the title company to do everything. Like I actually had to pay for a coach at one point. He was like, just make the title company do it. F them. If they don't want to do it, you can go to somebody else. I'm like, I don't know that really is the way that I want to run my business.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, there are certain times when absolutely I don't mind helping out, but you're unfortunately not my only client. And so it gets a little muddy sometimes. And I also think that it breaks the barrier of the fact that we have to be a very neutral third party in the transaction. And so sometimes these sellers think that we personally work with this wholesaler, and that muddies the lines because then, worst case scenario, they go to sue somebody for something, they think that we're one and the same.
I gotcha.
And that muddies the lines. So there's two big reasons that I love transaction coordinators. The first one is for us specifically, wholesalers sometimes are very, very busy. They don't have time to answer our phone calls or our emails, which is fine. I completely understand that because you have to be out doing things in order to make more money. And so I need this document urgently, and I don't have anybody that can go out and get it. And I need a death certificate, and they don't have the time to do it. They don't respond back to me for 3 weeks. And then that delays their closing. And then it's my fault. You know what I mean? So that's frustrating. But then also too, I think, and I've seen it happen where you'll have this wholesaler who has so much potential to do more, but they don't have the time to do all of the paperwork as well as go out and be boots on the ground. So I've seen it happen where this one company that we work with was doing a couple of deals a month, doing really well, deals, and then finally started ramping up. We told him about EZRI closings and the TC transaction coordinating stuff. And since he has joined you guys, I think his business is tripled from what we can see.
That's cool.
Because it's again, he does not having to deal with the day-to-day paperwork, the day-to-day trend, what's going on with this file, when's it going to be closed, when am I going to get my wire? Y'all are doing that for him so that he is able to go out and get more business.
It's interesting because I talk about a lot with people as wholesalers, and I identify as a wholesaler. That's my pronoun, wholesaler. But we're hustlers and entrepreneurs and a little bit of banana heads, but we're very driven and love talking to people, which is great. That's why we make a lot of money. The bad side of that is we're incredibly not detail oriented. We are probably the worst. I tell people, if you're a wholesaler, your accountant probably hates you, your bookkeeper can't stand you, your attorney despises you because you don't do anything on time, and your title company probably doesn't like you too much either. So that personality type that makes us really successful doing, wholesaling or running our business or, doing that type of stuff it's the antithesis of being good at spreadsheets and problem solving and paperwork. So you need somebody on your side that can do that so that you can really spend your time doing the stuff that you love and that you're good at.
I agree. And like I said, I've seen it help and grow somebody's business astronomically on our end. And again, whenever we have a transaction coordinator, I kind of have a little bit of a sigh of relief because
it gives you one point of contact.
Exactly. Right? One point of contact, because, and sometimes wholesaling companies, they have a bunch of boots on the grounds people that we don't necessarily work with a lot. So sometimes we're who do we reach out to for this? What's going on? Who's the best person to reach out to? So it's nice with your business where I know who my contact is. If I have a problem, I go directly to them. They get it solved with the client, and then they come back to us and tell us what the resolution is. Or we work together to find a resolution. It's a very give and take relationship between the transaction coordinator and the title company.
And that's what we love. And that was always important to me. I had this one attorney in town here long before you were entitled, but his name was Jeremy, but we called him Dr. No, because every time we took a deal over there, it was man, we can't close this. You're going to have to quiet title. Oh, bankruptcy. Oh, death certificate. Oh, it was always couldn't do it. And then one day, finally, I was at wit's end. I just trashed deal after deal after deal over a year or two. Finally, one day I'm dude, come on. I just came from this lady's house. Like I told her we could do this. There's got to be something that we can do. And he's like, well, I guess if you can get a death certificate and you can get this and you can get that and these couple of affidavits, I guess we could close it. I'm like, motherfucker. We have thrown how many deals away? Literally in the trash can.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me there was a way.
Yeah.
You know, so I appreciate that in you guys. And, you know, that's certainly something that our team, we really strive to do, is to find an answer.
Exactly. I agree.
And there's not always, sometimes there's the fast answer, but other times it is the long answer. It's a super quiet title, or it's one of those things. And, you know, at least with us, you know, we'll help your seller understand that, but we'll stay in the process until we can get it to close, right? Because there is always an answer.
I agree.
Sometimes it's complicated, but there is an answer.
And I think that we pride ourselves on, like, if there's kind of a will, there's a way. Like, we'll get it figured out. It might be a little bit longer of a process to do it, but we can pretty much close on about anything. And whether that's like, again, like creative deals or stuff like that, like, we're going to try and find a way to get it closed.
Yeah, I would say as long as the seller or sellers are participating, we can work absolute miracles.
I agree.
It's when they won't answer the phone, or it's that one sibling who's like, nope, I'm not selling.
I don't want to sell this. Or they like, and a big thing too, I think, especially with like heirs, and now that you mentioned that, is some people think that just because you don't live here, you can't get a deal closed. So I think that deters a lot of sellers sometimes. So like, well, my sister doesn't live here, so how is she going to do it? I'm like, well, don't you worry about it. I've got mobile notaries that can go out to you, and they can meet you anytime, anywhere.
We can close in your living room, McDonald's, or another title company
or
that's close by.
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna get it done regardless. That's our philosophy.
So 3 years in title. What did you do before?
Well, it's a long list. I mean, I've worked in insurance. I've bartended.
Really?
I've worked in a pharmacy. Waited tables. You name it, I've done it.
So it sounds like you've got a background that's good with people.
Yeah.
Which is weird for a title company because they're not all that way.
I agree.
You know,
even in personal experience.
Yeah, right. Like, trust me, I've talked to a lot of title company people. It's interesting. And of course, you know, organized because you worked in insurance. So 3 years in title, you must have some crazy stories.
Yeah, I do.
I love hearing title stories.
It's so funny. I just, sometimes things don't surprise me anymore. And they just really don't. I know one story that always sticks out to me is this is in Georgia. So Georgia laws are very strict. Honestly, it's an attorney state. So Georgia's a little bit different than Tennessee. And those are the only two we do. But we had this file where this man was in jail, which is not uncommon. I like
people in jail because they're easy to find.
Well, I have physically gone to the jail and had notarized documents. Like, we don't care. We'll get it again.
Yeah. I'll take a person in jail over somebody overseas or somebody missing, because the guy in jail, he's in the system. We can track him down.
He's there.
Yeah. Or her.
Yeah. So he's in jail and somebody is signing his power of attorney on his behalf to sell this property.
Oh, yeah.
That's not even the worst part.
Yeah.
So we get the cert back and he lets us know that his spouse was on title, but she has since passed. So we get a copy of her death certificate. And so we're nosy people. So we do a little bit of Googling of this guy and what he's in jail for. Come to find out, he murdered his wife.
She passed away.
Yeah.
Very unfortunate circumstances.
She passed away of bad circumstances. And in Georgia, the deed say right of survivorship, which means that if somebody passes away, then it goes to the other person on title. So due to the circumstance of which she passed, that was severed because of the nature of that. And we actually had to involve like underwriting, our attorney with it, and like ask them, how does this work?
Where does the money go?
We didn't close it.
Really?
Yeah, because it would have involved her heirs. So it would have been her and her heirs that had to sign to convey this property, and her heirs didn't want to sell it. So
for all of you who are watching Lifetime all the time, and it's, you know, the husband or, you know, somebody kills their spouse, you cannot whack your spouse and then get the money.
Yeah.
There's laws against
that. Can you believe it? Specific law, and we had to ask her attorney about it. So yeah, that was one of the.
So then, because would he have even had to sign, or he's just out?
So he still technically has rights to the property because he's 50% owner. It just severs the right of survivorship. So he still owns 50%.
But he can't profit from it, right?
I don't think they specified, actually.
Okay.
I'm sure he's on title for 50%. Okay. So he would still own and profit 50%, but he can't ever sell it without his late spouse's heirs.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
So he couldn't convey it.
So let's talk about heirs, because this is always an interesting thing, because, you know, the one thing that we do as investors is we love to go out and solve problems, find problems, which is cool, right?
And ask me to solve them.
Yeah. The more problems we can solve, the lower we can get our price. But then out of the other side of our mouth, we're talking to our buyer and going, hey, man, We get you clear title, proration of taxes, bing, bing, boom. We're going to get this thing done. But in between there could be like the Grand Canyon.
Right.
You know, it could be just this stack of problems, and somebody has to unwind all those. But one of them is dead people, right? We get a lot of dead people. It's a thing. Like, what's the kind of hierarchy of, you know, if somebody passes away, you know, or you've got a dead spouse or a dead grandparent, like, who gets involved?
So chain of title is very interesting. So if you have just two people or a person on title and they pass away, it goes to any and all heirs, both biological or legally adopted. And so that is typically a spouse, if you're married at the time, and children. So again, biological or legally adopted children. If you don't have any children or you weren't married, it goes up to the parents. So it goes down first and then it goes up to the parents. If parents are dead, it goes out to the siblings.
Okay. So down, up, out. Got it.
And then
not confusing at all.
Yes. And then it gets more complicated if you like have no siblings or one of your siblings is dead. It's kind of it can get very like complicated.
So if you had one brother, but then it would go to his wife.
Go to his child. Correct. It doesn't go to your heirs, but it would go to like his children.
So a 90-degree turn down if he had one child. That's how people like inherit great uncle Bob's massive fortune.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we've had situations where it's like 3 generations down that are having to, and that had no idea that they were even involved in the situation.
So like, how do you know to go find little Johnny, the nephew?
So we ask the questions that we ask people too. So we compare, first of all, what they say, and then also
because people never lie.
Correct. And then also obituaries. We look at obituaries too. You can write your family writes your obituary, so they can put in it whatever they want at the end of the day. So we take it with a grain of salt.
Usually what I say is people don't think to lie the day they're putting their loved one in the ground.
You would think.
Right? Like, but they do get spiteful and omit people, I would imagine.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And we've had a situation before where we have been told that this lady is the only child, and then we look at the obituary and you're like, no, you have 3 siblings. And she was like, oh, I didn't think I had to mention them. Like, people genuinely think that we're not going to find out.
We have seen that a ton of one heir, sibling, whatever, just trying to screw the other ones over. Yeah, I'm the only one, or I'm the executor.
Exactly. And the way that we're able to prove this stuff too is we do what's called heirship affidavits. We don't typically require anybody to go to probate if we don't have to, and probate is obviously what you do after somebody passes.
Right.
We really try not to make somebody to go to probate. So we do what's called heirship affidavits. And in the heirship affidavit, it states who the decedent was when they passed away, those property address, their marital status, and then a list of all their heirs. And then we at Key Title require 2 of them signed by disinterested parties, so people not related to the family. And those people sign this document attesting to the fact that there are no other heirs out there other than these listed.
But if they lied, they're on the hook.
So we tell them when they sign it that this is a legally binding document, and if you are falsifying any information, then it is a federal offense.
Wow.
So if this is not correct, do not sign it. And we make them put their address and their phone number on it so that if it's wrong, we can contact them.
Wow. Have you ever had anybody try to do some shenanigans?
Yes, we have. We had a file come back where we had heirship affidavits signed, and this is why we ended up adding people's contact information to them, because we had heirship affidavits signed. It came back later, an heir came back later and said, you guys conveyed this without involving me, and I'm a child. And that's when we are off the hook, because it's all about shifting liability and title. So then we found this person that signed the heirship affidavit, and they went after them because we did our due diligence, got all of the correct documentation. So it fell off of us as liability, and now went to this person who signed the document.
Interesting. And that's something that I've learned over the last year or so, exploring the world of title, that it's an insurance game. It's insurance.
It is.
Just like everything else. You know, this has happened a lot, and I'm sure I've done it too in my career. Is, come on, man, can't you just make this one happen? Can't you just, I know, I get it, but can't you get it? Or we'll have clients who call us and say, can't you just force a title company to do it? No, because you're literally going on the hook for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000.
And as a wholesaler, like at the end of the day, we know like everybody wants to make money. At the end of the day. Everybody's here to make money. But the problem,
and you make money when you close it, so it's not it's not like you're making money by not closing it.
I tell people all the time, if this doesn't close, I also don't get paid. So it's not that I don't want this to close. It's like, can't sometimes. But the thing about it too, that I remind people is, yes, it is insurance, but also like as a wholesaler, like if we don't do this correctly, like your buyers, the one being affected because their policy is not going to be clear. And like whether people want to care about that or not, some people only care about money, and that's fine. But you're basically screwing over the buyer.
Well, and not only that, let's just say I sell this property. I wholesaled it from a guy who bought it at the tax sale. So tax sale properties don't have clear title because of, the underwriters don't always feel like the county does the tax sale correctly. So it's not clear and marketable title yet. It could be. It doesn't mean it's bad, but it's not. So if I sell that to an end buyer and convince you to say it's all good, we're all good, and that dude goes and puts $200,000 into that property and then goes to sell it, and the next title company's like, hey, this is no good. Like, not only you're going to get sued, I'm going to get sued as a wholesale. Everybody's getting sued.
Right.
Like, they're not going to discriminate. Like, you were involved in this transaction,
and
now somebody has hundreds of thousands of dollars out on hard money that's accruing interest. Like, you're on the hook for all that stuff. So there's no upside to it.
No. And again, one of the things that my boss told me whenever I first started this job is, at the end of the day, we are building a case. We are trying to get every single piece of evidence that we can to build our case, so that if this goes in front of the judge, we have every piece of evidence that we had. And this has happened to me before with a payoff. We collected a payoff that was good through a certain date, and good through means that it's all the interest is there. So we closed on the property, sent off the payoff, and they put it in foreclosure the next day after receipt of our payoff. We called the company and we were like, why are you foreclosing on this? We have the wire confirmation.
And that trustee had to know. Like, it wasn't a surprise.
Exactly. Right. And so we had to get our attorney to send a demand letter to stop the foreclosure, because we paid them their money. It left our account. We ended up having to have them file a claim against the title insurance policy, the buyer that bought it, and then they turned around and sold it. So there's 2 title insurance policies involved now, 2 separate underwriters. I had to go to court and provide them all this evidence where the wire left our account,
so the guy who bought it from you resold it, not knowing that it had gone through the whole.
It was really bad.
Yeah.
And it eventually got resolved and they accepted our payoff. But that's why building that evidence is so important, because we had it all there. The wire confirmation, the phone calls, everything was there. And the judge obviously,
So the guy who got it in the foreclosure, he wanted to sue everybody, and he wanted.
No, we just happened to hear about it. Like, what happened was the company called and they were like, hey, we received your payoff, but it wasn't for the right amount. And so we're foreclosing on this. Like, come on, like, the sale is in 2 weeks. And we were like, no. That's not true.
You gave us a payoff.
You gave us, and we were even on the phone with them, and we were like, we need another payoff, because that's what our attorney advised us to do, is get another payoff. And we explained this girl the whole situation. She was like, well, if you would have just wired the amount on the payoff, then they wouldn't be in this situation. And we were like, ma'am, we did wire the amount that was on the payoff. You gave us this payoff, and the payoff date was good through like the 30th, and we closed and sent the payoff on the 20th.
Oh, wow.
So there was 10 extra days.
There's time where you could have got the money. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, some crazy stuff that we deal with.
Let's talk about POAs. You mentioned that earlier, and I wanted to make a note. They're like funny things. So here's what I tell people. Powers of attorney means one person can act on somebody else's behalf. Awesome. But they're super broad.
Yes. And they're also the number 1 title claim.
Well, that's it. So again, this is an insurance business. So the way that I understand it is title companies get nervous about a POA because why are you signing for this other person?
Correct.
Right? Like, what's the reason that Miss Bessie cannot show up? Like,
Correct.
we want to know for sure, because we would much rather have her signature on the paper than a power of attorney.
Correct.
And then beyond that, as a POA has to be you like it to be very specific to this property being sold on this date by this person, like super, like 0 questions.
Yes. And I think that there's a lot of misconceptions with power of attorneys and how much power they actually have specifically in real estate. So yes, the first thing we look at is the verbiage of the power of attorney. So you can have, a limited power of attorney, which is very specific, or a general power of attorney, durable power of attorney. To be honest, I'm not an attorney, so I do not know the specifics of each one. The verbiage that I'm looking for is that the power of attorney has the authority to sign on behalf of the person for real estate transactions.
Okay.
Has to have that specific verbiage. And then also, depending on the reason why it's being used, it also needs to have the verbiage in there that regardless of that person's mental capacities or medical disabilities, it's still valid.
Okay.
So that's the first thing that I do. The second question that I ask is, why are you using this power of attorney?
Right.
And they'll say like, oh, my mom just doesn't live here. I need to sign on her behalf. So I say, okay, perfect. I need to call your mom.
Sure.
And they sometimes get weird about that. But at the end of the day, I tell them, look, I'm just trying to protect you, your mom, and us.
Right.
I just need to verbally verify that she is who she says she is. She's aware of who's signing on her behalf and what she's agreeing for them to sign to. And if that conversation goes well, then great, you can sign as power of attorney. So the other conversation is, why is this being used? And sometimes there's like cognitive issues with sellers.
Which then you're not going to get her on the phone. And
correct. So obviously I can't call her up and ask what's going on.
Who's the president? Richard Nixon.
Yeah. So typically with power of attorneys prepare them.
Right.
So if an attorney...
I can't get one at Staples or LegalZoom or...
Technically you can, but it makes this situation a whole lot harder.
Yeah.
So I actually just had one recently that happened. So if there's cognitive disabilities, we will call the attorney and be like, hey, can you send us something in writing that says that when this was signed, this person was of sound mind?
Gotcha.
Because again, we're shifting liability.
Right.
So as long as we get that letter that says that they're of sound mind when they signed it, then we're fine to use it. Sometimes an individual prepared it, so we have to get a doctor's note that says that they were of sound mind at the time. Sometimes they don't currently have dementia, but they accidentally mention that they have dementia, so we have to get a doctor's note that says that they're currently lucid to be able to confirm all of this. So there's just a lot of liability with power of attorneys, and so we would rather you sign it. And even if that means that I have to get a mobile notary for you, I would rather get a mobile notary for you than to have somebody sign as power of attorney. And so, people get very frustrated when we have to ask all these questions.
So it's not a good idea to come to closing and go, hey, I got mom here, but she's a little crazy.
And that's why too, again, at the title company, we have to be very cognitive about talking to sellers, specifically sellers, before the closing, because if we talk to them and the day of closing, we're like, oh, by the way, you're coming in today, and they're like, who is this? I don't even know what day it is, or like we feel like they don't know what's going on, we can't notarize their document. So it kills the whole deal.
I had to do some legal documents recently, and the attorney came back in the room and she's like, before I bring these people in to notarize, like, don't be funny guy. Like, don't say funny stuff, because then I got to wax these 4 people and go find 4 more and start again. She's like, please don't do that. You know, it's not the time to be when you're dealing with this.
Yes, it's very intense. And I mean, unfortunately, we've dealt with a lot of fraud too. Recently, fraud is huge in real estate.
It feels like it's really blown up. It started with wire fraud, and now they're the crazy people forging deeds and notary certificates. I mean, it's crazy.
We have to be very, very careful about all of this, because if we're not, then it creates it's a domino effect down the road too.
And we've had, I don't know if the file went through you guys, but we had one here where you couldn't get a hold of the person. His name was the same as the dad's name, but it was just a lot of weird.
Megan told me about that.
A lot of weird things going on, and you couldn't get him on the phone. He just wanted to text, and it gave everybody the heebie-jeebies.
And again, those are red
I think
flags.
It turned out to be okay, which was weird, but this guy was doing everything he could to throw up red flags.
Yeah, and you really have to pay attention to the red flags as you go along, because the more you see, the more you're like, all right. Because I've even had people I didn't believe them, and I'll be like, all right, I need to Zoom with you. You need to have your ID with you, and to make sure that you are who you are. And we always get people's IDs if we're notarizing documents, but I don't know that until you're at the closing table. So I'm like, all right, can you Zoom with me, and I can see your ID, see you, to make sure you are who you are. Because fraud is it's sad right now.
Really?
Yeah, it's really bad. We get emails every day from underwriters like, here's another property that had a fraudulent deed. Check out for this person. Really? Every day. It's really bad.
That's crazy. You're talking about lots of money, and there's plenty of dishonest people out there. The thing I say about wholesaling is I think it's a great equalizer. Anybody can get really rich, fat, tall, skinny, blue, white, purple, doesn't matter. Everybody has the same opportunity to go out and make a lot of money. That's what's great about wholesaling. The bad thing about wholesaling, very low barrier of entry, and a lot of shitheads could get in here and really just, because you're dealing with people who either are distressed or have a distressed property and will agree to a lot of stuff and give you their social and do all these things, that those are the people who do the wrong things and and cause these issues for everybody else.
Exactly. I agree.
Well, cool. Anything else you want to tell us?
I think that's it.
No.
All my crazy stories.
I know. I love crazy stories. So powers of attorney. Let's talk about this. Is kind of the last thing I'm going to throw at you for innovation. Do you prefer power of attorney or them to the buyer, the wholesaler, to use an attorney in fact?
So for
trick question.
For us, we always prefer the seller to sign. Regardless. That's just the easiest way to do it. We're fine with attorney in facts for contracts. I know that's easier, especially for amendments, so you don't want to get your sellers involved in stuff. So we're fine with attorneys in fact. Doesn't bother us, but for the actual closing, they need to be the one signing. And then again, with the attorney in fact, some lenders are really picky about them. Like novations, the perks of it are selling to traditional buyers, you know. And so some lenders, specifically like VA lenders or things like that, they're very picky. So I've had them reject them in the past because they're like,
but they'd reject the POA probably too, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And so they had to, a signer had to go back and like change the verbiage in their attorney in fact and get it, re-executed, and then it was fine. But
those are kind of more one-off type things.
Exactly. Yeah. But we've never really had problems with them. We just prefer our seller to actually sign.
Yeah, I get that. And that's really for me too. I don't love the power of attorney. I don't want to show up and sign away somebody else's house and then find out later down the road they had changed their mind. Right. Or, I get it. They had a contract and they gave you the power of attorney, but I just feel more up and up having them show up and sign their own documents. They get their money, I get mine.
Exactly.
I don't have to be responsible for it. So in all of your deals, what percent do you think are investor deals?
Oh, I'd say at least 80%.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty high. I mean, we do a lot of regular real estate too, but sometimes our real estate files turn into investor files, or sometimes like our agents turn into investors. Yeah, so it kind of all muddles together. But I'd say 70 to 80% of what we do is investor.
That's crazy. That's why you do so many.
Yeah.
Last question. This is really the last question. So I promise I could keep you here all day. So I'm keep making notes here. So you work in Tennessee and Georgia, two obviously hotbed investor states. People from all over the country are virtual investing here. What are some of the laws that have changed recently, like that are making it? Because I do feel like, again, because we have those bad actors in our business, that the states are sort of starting to clamp down a little bit, right, on the people who are doing some of the silliness.
So we haven't had any superhuge ones. I feel like in Texas they just outlawed novations. Yeah. We haven't seen that here, but we do talk to our underwriters about it a lot just to make sure that they're okay with what we're doing. Of course, still fine with them, but it wouldn't surprise me if that changes.
Well, I know there's a rule about notices of contract that they changed.
Yes. Like the notice of interest.
Notice of interest, right.
Yeah. So, and that's on novations. And this is from our underwriter directly. So obviously, it's case by case. But so when we do a novation, we allow it to be done two separate ways in order for the seller to pay the invoice.
Right.
So we either require a notice of interest to be recorded on the property. Right. And then in order for us to have the invoice for the seller, that's like the payoff to release the notice of interest. Right. And so that just gets signed at closing, and release gets signed at closing. It just has to be filed prior to closing so that it's reflected on our title work.
Got it.
So that it shows that it's, again, a lien on the property. Or, and this is the one that we've found is a lot easier, is we have the seller sign like a hold harmless agreement that basically says like, we at the title company don't really have anything to do with this invoice. It's something that don't come after us. And then also they sign the actual invoice for the novation prior to closing to acknowledge how much they're getting charged.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. You're a wealth of knowledge. And, if you guys are doing work in Tennessee and Georgia, definitely reach out. It's keytitle.net. Lauren will probably be the person who helps you navigate through some part of that process. But I appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much.
Not a problem.
It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. We've been trying to get you here for a while.
I know.
All right. We'll see you guys later.